The sky was dark, covered with thick smoke. Broken towers stood like dead trees. The ground was full of ashes, metal, and bodies. The air smelled like burnt stone and blood. There was no sound, no birds, no voices, only the distant crackle of fire. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Her head hurt. Everything around her was destroyed. Her city, gone. Her people, gone. She tried to move, but pain shot through her leg. It was broken. She gasped and fell back on the ground. Why am I alive? She thought. The enemy had attacked without warning. Ships came from the sky, and fire fell like rain. She remembered screams, running, and then darkness. Now, only silence. Her hands shook as she touched the ground. Dust and blood stuck to her fingers. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Her world was gone. She was alone. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Crushing the rubble with each step. Lyra froze. Her heart raced. Was it an enemy soldier? Had they come back to finish the job? She looked around for a weapon, a stone, anything, but there was nothing. The steps came closer. A shadow appeared through the smoke. A tall figure, wide shoulders, holding something long in his hands. Lyra pressed herself against a broken wall. Her breath was shallow. The figure came out of the smoke. It was not one of her people. His skin was pale, his hair dark. His armor was scratched and covered in dust. A human. Lyra stared, shocked. She had heard of humans before. Her people called them dangerous, cold, selfish. Monsters in human form. But this one, he did not look like a monster. He looked tired. His face had dirt and blood, but his eyes were calm. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The silence felt heavy. Then he spoke. His voice was deep, soft. "You're hurt," he said slowly. "Don't move." Lyra didn't understand why, but his tone was gentle, not like an enemy. Still, fear gripped her. "Stay away," she whispered, her voice shaking. He raised his hands slowly, showing he had no weapon. Then he knelt in front of her. His shadow fell over her broken leg. "You can't walk," he said quietly. "If you stay here, you'll die." Lyra wanted to argue, to tell him to leave her alone, but her throat was dry. She could only whisper, "Why? Why help me?" The man looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because you're alive," he said simply. "That's enough." Before she could answer, he reached for her gently. His hands were warm, even through the gloves. Lyra tried to push him away, but her strength was gone. He lifted her like she weighed nothing. Her heart pounded as his arms wrapped around her. She had never been this close to a human before. His chest was solid, his heartbeat strong. She could feel his breath near her ear. She hated this feeling, this strange mix of fear and safety. "Let me go," she whispered, but her voice had no power. "No," he said firmly. "Not leaving you here." He started walking, carrying her through the ruins. Each step crunched over broken stone. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder, too weak to fight. Smoke covered the sky. Fires burned in the distance. Somewhere, metal groaned and collapsed, but the man didn't stop. He moved with purpose, like nothing could break him. After a long silence, Lyra spoke softly. "You're kind? They say you only fight for yourselves." The man gave a small smile. They were wrong. Lyra closed her eyes. For the first time since the attack, she felt something strange in her chest. A tiny spark of warmth in all this cold, but her mind whispered a warning. He is human. You can't trust him. Still, as darkness closed in again, the last thing she felt was his arms holding her like she mattered. And for a broken alien girl in a dead city, that was everything. Asterisk, he could have walked away. He should have. But he did single quotes T. Ethan moved carefully through the ruins, his boots crunching on broken glass. In his arms, Lyra felt as light as a child. Her eyes stayed closed, but he knew she wasn't asleep. She was awake and afraid of him. He could feel her tension. Every breath she took was quick, shallow, like she thought he would drop her at any moment. He didn't blame her. If he were in her place, he'd feel the same. 2 days ago, their species were killing each other. Now he was carrying one of them like she was the most precious thing in the galaxy. Ethan didn't know why he stayed. Maybe because she was alive when everyone else was gone. Maybe because her eyes, when they opened, looked like someone begging the universe for one last reason to hold on. That's reason enough, he told himself. Put me down, Lyra whispered suddenly, her voice soft but sharp like broken glass. Glanced down at her pale face. Her skin had a faint silver glow under the ash. Strange, but beautiful in a way he couldn't explain. You can't walk, he said calmly. Your leg's broken. Then leave me, she said bitterly. You have no duty to me. Ethan almost laughed, but there was no humor in his voice. You think I'd leave someone alive out here? Not happening. Lyra turned her head away, looking at the gray sky. Humans fight for themselves. That's what we were told. He smirked, stepping over a fallen beam. Guess they told you. Wrong. The ruins stretched endlessly. Towers reduced to skeletons. Fires burning like dying stars. The silence was heavy, except for the distant sound of collapsing steel. Ethan's muscles ached, but he didn't slow down. Every step mattered. If they stayed here when night came, they'd both die. Finally, he found a building still standing half collapsed, but strong enough to shelter them. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, dust falling like gray snow. Inside, it smelled of old oil and rust. He laid Lyra down gently on a metal sheet, then crouched to check her leg. It was bad swollen and twisted. He removed his gloves, tore a strip from his sleeve, and started wrapping it. Lyra watched him silently. Her glowing eyes followed every movement of his hands. Why? She whispered again. Ethan tied the bandage tight, then looked straight at her. His voice was low but firm. Because I couldn't watch you die. Something changed in her face. The hardness faded for a moment. But then, her eyes narrowed again. You risk your life for an enemy? He shrugged. You're not my enemy. You're just someone who needs help. Lyra didn't answer. She turned her face away, hiding the tears that burned her eyes. She hated that his words made her chest ache. Ethan sat beside her, leaning against the cold wall. He pulled out a small pack, shaking it one ration left. He opened it and handed it to her. Eat, he said simply. She stared at it like it was poison. You share this with me? He smiled faintly. I'm not hungry. Lyra hesitated, then took the food with trembling hands. It tasted strange, but warm. She chewed slowly, eyes flicking to him. He was looking at the doorway, his jaw set. Like steel, always alert, always ready. Why are you alone? She asked softly. Ethan didn't look at her. His voice was quiet, almost distant. Lost my unit 2 nights ago. Airstrike wiped them out. Guess I'm the last one. Silence hung between them like a shadow. Lyra felt something heavy in her chest. This human wasn't a monster. He was broken too. You could have gone. She whispered. You could have left me and saved yourself. Ethan finally looked at her. His eyes were tired, but strong. I'm not leaving anyone behind. Not again. Something deep inside Lyra shifted. She didn't understand it, but she felt it. For the first time since the war began, she wasn't just surviving. She was alive. And the reason was a human who should have hated her. but DID and single quotes T dot outside. The ruins groaned as the wind howled. Through broken walls. Somewhere in the distance, metal boots clanged on stone. The enemy was still hunting, and Ethan knew, if they found this place, he'd die before he let them take her. Asterisk, the sound of metal boots made them freeze. Someone was hunting them. Night had fallen over the ruins. The world outside was nothing but darkness and smoke. A cold wind slipped through the cracks of the broken walls, carrying the smell of ash and death dot inside the ruined building. Lyra sat against the wall, her broken leg wrapped in torn fabric. Every time she tried to move, pain shot up like fire. Ethan was near the doorway, his rifle ready, his body tense like a coiled spring. He didn't speak much. He just listened. Every sound mattered. The creak of metal, the crackle of a distant fire. And then, something else. Clang, clang, metal boots. Slow, heavy, coming closer. Ethan raised a hand, signaling silence. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The footsteps grew louder, echoing between the broken buildings. They're searching, Ethan whispered, his voice so low it was almost a breath. Who? She asked, her voice trembling. Not your friends, he said darkly. Lyra's heart pounded. She knew who it was. Enemy patrols, the same ones who burned her world to ash. If they found her, they'd kill her. If they found him, they'd do. Worse. The steps stopped outside. Shadows moved across the cracks of the wall. Ethan moved like a ghost, crouching low, pressing his back to the wall. His rifle was ready, finger tight on the trigger. Lyra could feel her pulse in her ears. She prayed. They wouldn't look inside. The door creaked. Slowly. A beam of white light sliced through the darkness. Lyra held her breath. Ethan didn't move. His muscles were stone. A voice spoke in a harsh alien tongue. Another answered. Then the boots moved again. The light disappeared. Lyra exhaled shakily. But Ethan didn't relax. He waited, counting the seconds, listening. For more. Finally, he whispered, "They'll sweep the whole block." "What do we do?" Ethan looked at her leg, then at the broken floor behind her. He pointed. "There's a crawl space. Move." "I can't," she said, panic in her voice. "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "On your hands, now." Lyra swallowed hard and dragged herself toward the hole. Every movement was agony. Ethan helped her down into the darkness, then slid in after her, pulling a piece of metal over the opening. The space was tight and smelled of rust. They could barely move. Lyra felt his arm against hers, strong and warm. Above them, the boots returned. Louder this time. Voices barked orders. Something heavy crashed against the wall. Dust rained down on their faces. Lyra pressed her hand to her mouth to stop from making a sound. Her body trembled, but Ethan's arm moved. His hand gently touched her shoulder. A silent message. Stay calm. I've got you. The searchers stayed for minutes that felt like hours. One of them stopped right over the hiding spot. The metal sheet above them creaked. Lyra's heart almost stopped. Then, finally, the boots moved away. The voices faded. Silence returned. Lyra let out a shaky breath. Her whole body ached from fear. She turned her head toward Ethan in the dark. His face was close, so close there. Foreheads almost touched. "You could have left me," she whispered. "If they found us, you'd die." He looked at her, his eyes steady even in the dim light. "Then I'd die keeping you safe." The words hit her harder than any weapon. She didn't understand why this human would risk everything for her. She didn't understand why her chest felt tight when he said it. Ethan shifted slightly, still listening to the world above. Then he spoke softly. "You trust me yet?" Lyra hesitated. Her voice trembled. "I don't know." He smiled faintly. That's a start. Outside, the wind howled like a dying beast. The ruins groaned under the weight of silence. But in the darkness of that crawl space, something fragile began to grow a trust. Neither of them expected dot asterisk. Why risk everything? For me? She asked in the darkness, her voice breaking like glass. Hours passed before they dared to move. The patrol sounds faded into the ruins, swallowed by the wind. Only then did Ethan push the metal sheet aside and climb out first, scanning the night. With sharp eyes, all clear, he whispered, reaching down to help Lyra out. She took his hand reluctantly, but when his grip closed around hers, it was firm, warm, and certain. He lifted her carefully, carrying her again because her leg was worse, now swollen and throbbing. She didn't fight him this time. She was too tired. And something in her had changed. The ruins stretched like a graveyard under the pale light of a shattered moon. Ethan moved quickly, his boots crunching softly over broken stone. Lyra rested, her head against his chest, her breath shallow, listening to the steady thump of his heart. Finally, they reached a large metal hatch, half buried in debris. Ethan kicked the rubble away and forced it open with a grunt. Rust screamed, and the hatch gave way. Inside was an old storage bunker, dark, cold, but safe. Ethan set Lyra down gently on a pile of crates. He flicked on a small light from his wrist pad, casting a dim glow across steel walls and dusty shelves. "This will do," he muttered, scanning the space. "We stay here until morning." Lyra looked around, hugging her arms around herself. "You planned this?" "No," Ethan said, kneeling to check her bandage. "Just got lucky." She watched him work in silence, his rough hands moving with surprising care. He tore more fabric from his undershirt, cleaned her wound with the little water he had, and wrapped her leg tighter. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but sharp. "Why?" Ethan didn't look up. "Why what? Why help me? Why carry me through fire and death when you could have left me to die?" Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, like stars trapped in tears. "We are not friends. Our species are at war." Ethan paused, then met her gaze. His voice was calm, steady. "Because you're alive, and because I've seen enough. Death for one lifetime." Lyra stared at him, her chest tightening. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to believe he had a hidden reason. But his eyes, they didn't lie. She looked away, blinking fast. "You humans, we were told you only fight for yourselves." He gave a small, bitter smile. "Then they lied to you." Silence filled the bunker like heavy smoke. Ethan leaned back against the wall, pulling his jacket tighter around himself. He looked tired, his face hard with lines of dirt and pain. His shoulders slumped like a man who had carried the weight of a whole world. Lyra spoke again, quieter this time. "You said? You've seen enough death. What did you mean?" "For." A moment, he didn't answer. Then his voice came low, almost a whisper. "My unit, 50 men and women, good people. We landed to help civilians. But the strike hit before we could move. I watched them burn." Lyra felt something sharp twist inside her chest. She imagined the flames, the screens, the same way her people had died. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He gave a short nod, his jaw tight. "War takes everything, but I won't let it take what's left of me." His eyes softened as they met hers. "And right now, what's left of me is making sure you live." Her breath caught. The words were simple, but they hit like a storm. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. She just looked at him, the human she was told to fear, the man who carried her when the world ended. A distant rumble shook the bunker. Dust fell from the ceiling. The storm outside was growing. Howling like a beast, Ethan pulled off his jacket and laid it over her shoulders. She flinched at the warmth, at the way it smelled of steel and smoke, and something she didn't understand. "You'll freeze without it," she said softly. He gave a small grin. "I've been colder." She held the jacket close. It felt like a shield, like safety itself. And for the first time in her life, Lyra wondered if maybe, just maybe, everything she was taught about humans was wrong. But she didn't say that out loud. Not yet. Instead, she whispered the question that had been burning inside her since the ruins. "What happens when they find us?" Ethan's face hardened. His hand rested on his rifle. His voice was quiet, but strong. "Then I make sure they never take you alive." Her heart skipped. Not from fear. From something else she didn't want to name. The storm screamed outside, but inside the bunker, the silence between them was louder. Hours passed. The wind outside howled like a wounded beast, carrying the metallic scent of death. The storm was fierce now, sheets of acid rain pounding the ruined city, flashes of green lightning tearing through the black sky. Inside the bunker, the world was small and quiet. Only the soft hum of Ethan's wrist light filled the darkness. Lyra sat against the wall, wrapped in his jacket. The fabric was too big, almost swallowing her small frame, but its warmth was real. She didn't remember the last time she felt warm. Ethan sat across from her, cleaning his rifle. His movements were slow, methodical, like a man who needed something to keep his mind from breaking. Lyra studied him silently. His hair was messy, his armor scratched, his hands scarred from battles he never spoke of. She didn't understand him. He was human, a soldier of the enemy, yet he gave her food, his jacket, his strength. Finally, she broke the silence. "You could have left me," she whispered. "Why didn't you?" Ethan looked up, his eyes calm but tired. "I told you, I don't leave people behind." Lyra shook her head. "But I'm not your people." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. His voice was low, steady. "Doesn't matter." Her chest tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. The storm roared louder, shaking the walls. The bunker groaned like an old beast. Temperature dropped. Lyra shivered, pulling his jacket tighter, but the cold bit through the fabric. Her teeth began to chatter. Ethan noticed. He set the rifle aside and moved closer. "You're freezing." "I'm fine," she lied, her voice trembling. He shook his head. "No, you're not." He crouched beside her, his presence filling the small space. "We'll have to share heat." "It's that or hypothermia." Lyra's breath caught. "Share heat?" Ethan didn't wait for permission. He slid down beside her and wrapped his arms around her carefully, mindful of her injured leg. His chest pressed against her back, his warmth seeping into her cold skin. She froze, her heart pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. Her people never touched like this, not even lovers. And now, an enemy held her like she mattered. "This isn't proper," she whispered. Ethan gave a soft laugh, close to her ear. "Neither is dying." The sound of his voice sent a strange shiver through her. Not fear, something else. Something dangerous. Minutes passed. Slowly, her body stopped trembling. The warmth of him sank deep, and with it came a feeling she couldn't name. Safety. "You humans?" she whispered after a long silence. "You're not what they told us." Ethan's chin rested lightly near her hair. "What did they tell you? That you only care about yourselves? That you destroy everything you touch?" He was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes that's true," he said finally, "but not always." She turned her head slightly, just enough to see his face. His eyes were close, reflecting the dim glow of his wrist light. They weren't cold. They weren't cruel. They were gentle. Her voice shook when she asked, "And me? Why do you care if I live?" He didn't look away. His answer was simple, but it struck her like a blade to the heart. Because I don't want to watch another world burn. Her breath caught. She wanted to ask more, wanted to understand him, but her words tangled in her throat. So she stayed silent, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside that bunker, something else was happening. Something fragile and dangerous, like a spark in the dark. Lyra closed her eyes, telling herself it was only for warmth, only for survival. But deep inside, she knew that was a lie. And when Ethan's arms tightened around her, just slightly, as if to say, "I've got you," she didn't pull away. For the first time since the war began, she didn't feel like a soldier. She didn't feel like an alien. She felt human. Asterisk, the first sound of hope was not a voice. It was static. The storm had calmed by dawn, leaving the city broken and drowned in a sick green mist. The bunker was cold, the walls sweating moisture. Lyra woke slowly, her body heavy, her mind foggy. Ethan was already awake, crouched near the entrance. His rifle lay across his knees, his eyes scanning the ruins through a cracked panel of steel. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Lyra shifted slightly, the movement sending pain through her injured leg. A soft sound escaped her lips before. She could stop it. Ethan turned immediately. "You okay?" His voice was low, but sharp with concern. She nodded, though her face said otherwise. "I'm fine," she lied. He didn't argue, but his jaw tightened. She noticed that about him. He didn't waste words. He acted. Before she could speak again, a sound broke the silence. A faint crackle. Ethan froze. Slowly, he lifted his wrist device. Static whispered from the small speaker. Then, through the hiss, came a voice. "Survivors, repeat, extraction point. Grid 7, sunrise tomorrow." Lyra's heart slammed against her ribs. She understood some of it. Hope, rescue. A way out of this graveyard. Ethan stared at the device, his face unreadable. Then he looked at her. "We've got a chance." Her breath caught. "You mean someone's coming?" He nodded once. "But the grid is miles from here. And we don't have much time." Lyra felt her stomach drop. "Miles?" "Ethan, I can't even stand." He was already packing his gear. "You won't have to. I'll carry you." Her eyes widened. "That's insane. You'll slow down. You'll die trying to save me." He strapped on his rifle, his movements. Sharp, focused. "Then I'll die moving forward. I'm not leaving you." Lyra stared at him, her throat tight. She wanted to argue, but the fire in his voice burned every word she had. Outside, the world was still. Too still. Ethan checked the shadows, then moved back to her. He crouched low, his arms sliding under her carefully. She winced as her legs shifted, but he held her steady. "Hold on," he said softly. And then they were moving. The city stretched before them like the bones of a dead giant. Towers split in half, streets swallowed by craters. Smoke curled from broken metal like ghosts rising from graves. Ethan walked fast, his boots crunching over glass and ash. His breath came hard, but he didn't slow. Lyra clung to him, feeling the strength in his arms. He wasn't a machine. He was a man-tired, scarred human. And yet he carried her like she weighed nothing. "Why?" she whispered suddenly, the question clawing out of her throat. "Why risk everything for me?" He didn't look at her. His voice was rough but sure. "Because you deserve to live. Because you're more than this war." Her chest ached. She didn't know what to say, so she held tighter, burying her face against his shoulder as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. And the sound came. Metal boots. Far away, but coming closer. Ethan stopped, listening, his jaw clenched. Patrols, He muttered. Panic clawed at Lyra's throat. "They'll kill us. Not if I kill them first," Ethan said coldly. He ducked into the shell of a collapsed building, setting her down behind a slab of concrete. His rifle was already in his hands, his eyes hard as steel. "Stay low," he ordered. Lyra grabbed his sleeve. "Ethan, don't." He looked at her, and for a heartbeat, the soldier's mask cracked. His voice softened, just for her. "I'll come back. I swear it." And then he was gone, melting into the shadows. Like a ghost, the minutes crawled like years. Lyra's pulse hammered in her ears. She heard distant shots short, sharp bursts of sound. Then silence. Her hands shook as she clutched the edge of the concrete. "Please come back. Please." Footsteps returned. Slow. Careful. Her breath caught until a familiar voice whispered, "It's me." Ethan knelt beside her, his face streaked with soot, his hands trembling slightly. But he was alive. "Come on," he said softly, lifting her again. "We've got to move." As he carried her out into the dead city once more, Lyra pressed her forehead to his neck. She didn't care about pride anymore. She didn't care about the lies her people told. This man, this human, was everything she never believed in. And as the broken sun bled through the clouds, one thought burned in her mind. If hope had a shape, it would look like him. Asterisk, when the asterisk. Last blast hit, she thought she had lost him forever. The broken sun was sinking behind black clouds. When they saw it, the beacon flashing faintly in the distance. The extraction point. Safety. Lyra's heart leapt, but fear crushed it just as fast. The open ground stretched before them like a killing field. No walls, no cover. Only shattered vehicles, and the smell of burnt metal. Ethan crouched behind. Slab of concrete, her weight still in his arms. His breath came harsh, his body trembling from exhaustion. He had carried her for miles through ash and death. Every step tore at him, but he never stopped. "We're close," he said, his voice ragged but steady. "Just a little more." Lyra stared at his face, dirt-streaked, bleeding from a cut near his temple. His eyes burned with the same fire that carried her this far. "You can't," she whispered. "You can't keep going. You'll die." He gave her a tired smile, small and soft. "Not yet." Then the sound hit, a roar, metal shrieking. And from the smoke, shapes emerged, enemy drones, gliding low with glowing red eyes. Behind them, soldiers in black armor, rifles humming with deadly light. Lyra's blood froze. "No," Ethan's jaw tightened. He set her down gently against the concrete, his hand brushing her cheek for a brief second, warm, rough, human. "Stay here," he said. "No." She grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. "You'll be killed." He looked at her, his eyes calm. "Even as death closed in. Then I'll die making sure you live." Before she could stop him, he was gone, charging into the storm of fire. The night exploded. Gunfire cracked like thunder. Sparks lit the ruins as bullets screamed through the air. Ethan moved like a shadow, rolling behind wreckage, firing with precision born from years of war. Lyra watched, her heart tearing apart. Every flash of his rifle was a heartbeat. Every second without a sound was a knife in her chest. Then it happened. A blast shook the ground. Smoke swallowed everything. And through the haze, she saw him on his knees, his rifle shattered, his armor smoking from a direct hit. "Ethan!" Her scream tore through the chaos. She dragged herself forward, her broken legs screaming with pain. She didn't care. She crawled through ash, her hands bleeding on the jagged stone. The soldiers closed in. One raised his weapon toward Ethan. Lyra didn't think. She grabbed a shard of metal and hurled it with all her strength. It struck the soldier's visor, making him stumble. A second's delay, but it was enough. Ethan lunged, tackling the soldier with a roar. He wrestled the rifle from his hands, spinning it in a deadly arc. Shots rang out, bodies fell. But Ethan was slow now, hurt, bleeding. More soldiers came. Too many. Lyra's vision blurred with tears. She crawled until she reached him, her hands clutching his arm. "Please, please don't leave me," she sobbed out. His breath was shallow. Blood ran down his side, dark and hot, yet his eyes still burned. "I told you," he whispered, his voice a broken rasp. "I'm not leaving you. Ever." The roar of engines cut through the chaos. A blinding light swept over the field, a dropship, descending like an angel of fire. The rescue team. Bullets rained from the ship's guns, ripping through enemy ranks. Soldiers scattered, their screams drowned by the storm of metal. Ethan's grip on her tightened weakly. "Go," he whispered. "No," she cried, shaking her head. "Not without you." A dropship landed hard. Figures in combat gear stormed out, firing at the last enemy stragglers. 2 soldiers rushed to them, pulling Lyra into strong arms, but she fought like a wild thing. "Take him," she screamed. "Take him too." They dragged Ethan onto the ramp, his head lolling, his lips pale. Lyra crawled to his side, clutching his face in her trembling hands. "Stay with me," she begged, her tears falling on his blood-streaked skin. "You can't leave me now. You can't." His eyes flickered open. A faint smile touched his lips. "You matter," he whispered, voice barely there. "Don't forget that." Her sob tore through the roar of engines. She pressed her forehead to his, her voice breaking into the hollow air. "No, you matter more." The ship rose, carrying them away from the burning graveyard of a world. Lyra held him in her arms, refusing to let go, even as medics worked frantically to save his life. In that moment, as the war burned far below, she knew one truth. He didn't just save her life. He became her life, the end.